welcome to The Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein, and thank you all for joining me again for today's reading of James Allen's Daily Meditation from February 12th. The last couple of, I think 3 have been about truth and aspiring to truth, and they've been great. I love these little micro journeys we're taking throughout this. So it's really good. I'm looking forward to today's. So we'll see how it goes. This will be fresh to you and fresh to me, which means you'll get my genuine observations, reactions, and responses and what I relate to in the reading, because this will be the first time I read it with you guys. So I'm looking forward to it. And we do have a Facebook page called The Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. Go ahead and give that page a like. You'll get the most recent podcast shared with you, and we can keep up to date with any new releases coming out too, or quotes or anything else shared. So I appreciate everyone jumping on. So here we go. Here's the reading for February 20th of James Allen's Daily Meditations. A man must know himself if he is to know truth. Let the tempted one know this, that he himself is both tempter and tempted, that all his enemies are within, that the flatterers which seduce, the taunts which stab, the flames which burn, all spring from that inner region of ignorance and error in which he has hitherto lived. And knowing this, let him be assured of complete victory over evil. When he is sorely tempted, let him not mourn. Therefore, but let him rejoice in that his strength is tried and his weakness exposed. For he who truly knows and humbly acknowledges his weakness will not be slow in setting about the acquisition of strength. He who cannot fearlessly face his lower nature cannot climb the rugged heights of renunciation. And let me tell you, this has been my exact experience with spiritual growth, spiritual understanding. The way the main body of this opened up with the essentially saying I'm responsible and I hold within me all the pain that I feel is inflicted upon me, or all the temptation that's inflicted upon me, has been true. There's internal causes and conditions to all of these things. And the opening line, a man must know himself if he is to know truth, is so crucial. You know, truth is embedded and buried underneath so many things. But first and foremost, it's buried underneath our own perceptions and ideas. It's buried underneath our own experiences and assumptions and expectations. So when we get the time and take the time to actually get to know ourselves, a lot of things change. We can see the honest truth about ourselves, and when we can see the honest truth about ourselves, we can see the honest truth about the situations we're in and the people we're around and how the world works. And that's an important thing to understand. He goes on to say, let the tempted one know this. So any of you that are striving for changing behaviors and are wishing to grow spiritually, but you're running into temptation, he's speaking to you, that he himself is both tempter and tempted, and all his enemies are within, that the flatterers which seduce, the taunts which stab, and the knives which burn, all spring from that inner region of ignorance and error in which he has hitherto lived. And that's what I'm talking about has been true for myself. When he says that he himself is both tempter and tempted, that all his enemies are within. Like all the pain is within yourself. All of these things that we think are externally being done to us, they really have wounds within our own hearts, our own souls, that are allowing them to hurt us, allowing them to penetrate us. And that's a difficult thing. When the flatterers seduce, what are they seducing? There's something in us. We look for that. When the taunts which stab, if we didn't have that vulnerability, that if we hadn't made peace with that wound, if we had made peace with that wound more so, the taunts wouldn't bother us. Our insecurities show by what people can throw at us, right? And the flames which burn all spring from the inner region of ignorance and error in which he has hitherto lived. So it's all an internal place we live. These things stay. All of these things come from inside of our own souls and our own experiences. And he says it's of ignorance and error. So our own misperceptions and our own lack of knowledge about things. I didn't realize this. I didn't understand this. But he goes on to say, and knowing this, let him be assured of complete victory over evil. When you can come to believe that, when you can come to understand that you are responsible for all the things that affect you because you are allowing yourself to be affected, whether someone has malicious intent or not, that's how it's getting through, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. That's where the attack comes in. That's where the penetration comes. We allow it in through the things we have not healed and the things we have misunderstood and the things we didn't know were there. How did he say it? Let him be assured of complete victory over evil. So when we can acknowledge those things, we can hold those things as truth to ourselves, and we start on that footing, we can have victory over evil. When he is sorely tempted, let him not mourn, therefore, but let him rejoice in that his strength is tried and his weakness exposed. Temptations are not meant to be condemned, he's saying here. Temptations actually call out of us our character defects, our shortcomings, our insecurities, our fears, our lack, insufficiencies. Use any word you'd like. But when tempted, we should not mourn. Therefore, let us rejoice in that his strength is tried and his weakness exposed. We get another place to address, to heal. We get to take a look at why that specific thing tempts us. We get to take a look at why this works, or this is affecting us. And when we are willing to do that, that's where the victory over evil is. For temptation to be scorned, for temptation to be ridden from us, it takes work. Because there will always be temptation there, because we've always functioned in a certain way. That's how it is. And for us to get through temptation, and as long as temptation's there, really, we're always have part of a foot in another world, right? Then the old behavior and the new behavior. We have to examine these things to understand where it's coming from, what part of us is reaching out to have this happen or to be tempted by these things. Why do we want that? Why do we do that? Why do we put ourselves in a position for that to happen? What do we get out of it most of the time? That's the question I usually ask. When we're tempted to be hurt by what someone said, when we're tempted to be burned by those flames, as they said, of scorn or whatever it is, or when we're tempted to be, flattered with, or the flatterer seduced, excuse me, that's the word I wanted to use there. Why are we allowing that? Why are we falling into that? That's something we have to ask ourselves. For he who truly knows and humbly acknowledges his weakness will not be slow in setting about the acquisition of strength. What they said beforehand was strength is tried and his weakness exposed. And then he goes on to say, for he who truly knows and humbly acknowledges his weakness will not be slow in setting about the acquisition of strength. Instead of being in denial about things and punishing yourself for these things, we get the opportunity to seek out the right path to correct these things. When we humbly acknowledge our weakness, we will not be slow in studying about the acquisition of strength. When we fully admit to ourselves, this is where we fall down, we can more readily and speedily go find the strength we need to overcome them. Do the work. This is saying, until you acknowledge your weaknesses, and in all these capacities, will we be able to go find what we need to correct them. And that's been so true for me. I needed to acknowledge all of this stuff that I've changed along the way, because if I think I'm okay, there's nothing to change. There's no work to do. Or if I'm trying to be in denial about it and hide it, I don't want people to know I've got this issue. I don't want people to judge me for it, or it's embarrassing. I don't want people to have a certain prejudice against me, whatever it might be. It's very important to understand it still needs to be acknowledged. Because as much strength as you're trying to give off or have people perceive of you, it is hollow. But the true strength comes from those who have found these weaknesses, acknowledged them openly, and worked through them. It's a whole different experience of life. And there's true strength in that, because the fear gets removed. And what a blessing that is. And then this is almost like a warning, I think, for the final line of this. He who cannot fearlessly face his lower nature cannot climb the rugged heights of renunciation. Well, that's what I was just talking about, I guess, honestly. He who cannot fearlessly face his lower nature. Until you can take an honest look at where you've been and where you're coming from, you're not going to be able to move forward. You're not going to be able to climb the rugged heights of renunciation. To purify your own soul, in a way, you're not going to be able to do it. You'll live in that. You'll live in those character defects. You'll live in those shortcomings. You'll live in those negative or damaging behaviors, thought patterns, habits. You will stay there until you acknowledge the truth about them and yourself. And that's been very true for me. So, there we go. That is February 20th. So thank y'all for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Another great one about actually doing the work, right? And this is, and about temptation, a very interesting subject, right? And how it's, yesterday it said temptation is the sign that you're aspiring to something different. And today it says temptation is something to be celebrated because it shows you where you need to do the work. So it's a lot of taking something that I personally have perceived as negative for so very long and saying, actually, that's a good thing because it's showing you yourself. And as long as you're willing to do the work, temptation should be invited because it shows you where you need to have some extra attention given. So, a great reading today, though. So thank y'all for joining me. And I will look forward to tomorrow, February 21st, and we'll see what it brings. So, until next time, thanks.